Okay, lesson 19. We start with Sahasrara Chakra, and then we will have a look at pranayama after asana. Sahasrara Chakra is the final chakra we need to discuss. On the other hand, we have talked about it many times already, because of course it is the goal of everything we do in yoga is to awaken the crown chakra, fuel it with energy. And by now you have understood that everything in yoga is designed to lead to the condition, sattva, harmony, that is responsible for energy rising up, that then leads to the awakening of the crown chakra. Without sattva, without energy rising up, the crown chakra remains dormant. The crown chakra remains asleep. If you understand all this, you also understand that every person, every single individual in the world has a potential to function based on the crown chakra. And the importance of that is that when the crown chakra is functioning, it leads to the manifestation of what we call the royal characteristics. The wonderful characteristics of the crown chakra that lead to a better world in general, that lead to people functioning from the heart, with a conscience, with love, but also people develop insight and wisdom. Without really being aware of it, there are many aspects of the crown chakra that we find in our languages around the world. I mentioned before the example of the expression in Korean language, 신이나요, 신났어. And when I asked what that means, people said, it means you're enthusiastic. And my answer was, but it means God. God came. Because Shin is God. It is directly referring to the crown chakra. Just like the word spirit. When you are very focused on something and you put your whole heart and soul into it, that is directly relating to the crown chakra. When you're enthusiastic and passionate, people will say that you are spirited, which is directly related to the crown chakra. But also the concept of heaven and hell is related to this. People think that when you die, you will be judged for whether you led a good life or a bad life. If you have led a good life, if you're lucky, you end up in heaven. If you have led a bad life, you will be sent to hell. And when we talk about heaven, we point upwards. And when we talk about hell, we point downwards. Heaven and hell do not come after you die. The truth is, the reality is that most people live in hell because of the suffering that they go through every day without knowing it. Heaven is the crown chakra. So when you're good-spirited, you are peaceful and harmonious, you are an enthusiastic person, doing positive and good things with your life for other people and yourself, the happiness that you experience, the sense of well-being that you experience, because your energy is in the crown chakra, that condition is paradise. Sattva leads to energy in the crown chakra and the manifestation of all those wonderful characteristics, but it also leads to people feeling good. Happy, spirited, enthusiastic, passionate, compassionate. All those wonderful sentiments are only possible when the crown chakra is functioning. And everybody loves that feeling. Why? Because it feels good. That is paradise. That is heaven. The crown chakra. So what, based on what I'm telling you now, what do you think is hell? Hell is identified or likened to suffering. The hellfire. You will be thrown into the fire of hell, where there is a devil with a pitchfork that will make you suffer. But where is hell? Really, when we talk about hell, we point down. Where do you think hell is? It's in your belly. It's in the 3 lower chakras with the lower emotions and desires. And that is where most people's, the point of gravity of most people's energy or consciousness is mainly in the belly, with some occasional flashes of energy going higher up. People are mostly gravitated towards the belly, lower emotions and desires. That condition is hell. The devil is not a person with a tail and goat feet and a pitchfork. The devil is the voice of your emotions and desires trying to trick you in doing things that lead to suffering. The devil is the voice of your emotions and desires that, if you don't control them, will lead to conflict and pain and suffering. So heaven and hell do not occur after you die. It is here and now, and the reality is, the truth is, most people in fact live in hell. One of the things that we learned at the very beginning of this course is the yamas and the niyamas. The foundation of the yamas and the niyamas that kind of stimulate you to think about moral principles, about behavior that can lead to harmony, or if you don't stick to it, can lead to disharmony, disruption, and therefore suffering and misery. The yamas and the niyamas lay the foundation for life lived in a condition that we call paradise. Also, you know, Jesus Christ often is pictured with a crown on his head made of thorn bush. You understand the symbolism in this? Before Jesus Christ was crucified, he was brought in front of the Roman judge. I think the judge or the emperor, his name is Pontius Pilatus. Pontius Pilatus, he was brought in front of Pontius Pilatus, and Pontius Pilatus mocked him. He laughed at him and said, "People say you claim to be a king. So if that's true, where is your kingdom?" And Jesus' answer was, "My kingdom is not of this earth, is not of this world." So very cryptical answer that made him become even more mocked. But the kingdom that he was talking about, of course, is the crown chakra. The crown chakra is the location of royal characteristics. A real king should be trained in such a way that they function based on the crown chakra. And that was Jesus' point. He was like a saint, and with his crown chakra fully functioning, he proclaimed to be a king. And there is a prayer that thy kingdom will come. That kingdom is the crown chakra. So not a kingdom that we normally talk about when we talk about a country with a royal family. Not that kind of kingdom. It's a kingdom of spirituality. It's subtle. The reason why they put this crown of thorn bush on his head was to just mock him as a fake king, because he didn't have a country, he didn't have a kingdom. They didn't understand, and maybe he didn't explain properly what that kingdom meant, or his kingship, what that meant. So you find in our languages and in our history many references to the crown chakra without actually knowing it. An example of wisdom from a real king is King Solomon. When we are talking about a very difficult judgment, when a judge or any person is confronted with a very complicated situation and has to make a very difficult but right decision, we call it a Solomon's judgment. A Solomon's judgment is called that because he found a very wise way to deal with a complicated situation. Two women were brought in front of King Solomon, and they were fighting over a child. They both claimed that it was their child. So King Solomon, we didn't have gene technology at that time to determine the real mother, and he was confronted with two people who both claimed to be the owner or the real mother of the child. You know the story? So he solved the problem by saying, he didn't say, okay, I will give the child to you, or I will give the child to you. He said, okay, let's chop the child in two and each of you can have half. Because he knew in his eternal wisdom that the real mother would freak out and not accept that. And that is what made him figure out who the real mother was. It was the person, the woman in front of him that reacted with horror about the idea that her child would be chopped up. A Solomon's judgment based on the crown chakra, which is the location of wisdom, insight. Now, I want to draw your attention to the conditions that the crown chakra can be in, because that seems a bit of a contradiction. By what you know so far about the crown chakra functions when there is sattva. So it seems a little bit odd that crown chakra can function with rajas and with tamas. But sattva is never 100% sattvic. There are always small fluctuations. And so you see at the bottom of the first page, next to the crown, I described the functioning of the crown chakra depending on the different conditions. So when there is sheer sattva in the crown chakra, the chakra expresses itself in intuition, and the characteristics described as that of a king. Wisdom, insight, intuition, etc. That mentioned here also. Then you see in a state of light Shakti domination. And I emphasize the word light by writing the text in cursive characters, because the emphasis is on light. Because if it is more than light, it is not harmonious anymore and the crown chakra is not functioning. But if there is sattva with a little bit of Shakti domination, a little bit of rajas, the chakra expresses itself in intelligence. So people, this is also the reason why yoga is also known to increase IQ levels in the practitioner. And one of the reasons why it would be good to introduce yoga into the curriculum of schools. Besides all the studying, it would be really good to add yoga to the curriculum, because it elevates intelligence. It leads. If you do an IQ test before you start practicing yoga, and then after some years of practicing yoga you do an IQ test again, you will see that your IQ has increased considerably as a result of yoga. And it's easily explained, because IQ tests exist mostly out of questions that require insight. They show you patterns, and you have to recognize the connection between certain patterns. The one thing that increases incredibly when you practice yoga regularly, you function in the crown chakra, is insight. Insight in patterns. You develop logic. You know, in English you have the expression common sense. Common sense is logic. I always jokingly say common sense is not so common, because most people do not have the ability to think logically. So common sense, everybody should have it, but most people don't. It's the crown chakra where you awaken common sense and logical thought. And with that, your intelligence increases considerably. In a state of light Shiva domination, the crown chakra expresses itself in sheer love. Shiva, on a higher level, is bliss. Bliss is love, not the romantic kind of love, but the love from the heart, the compassion, the empathy. The page 2 at the top is about ego. We talked about ego at length. Have you had a chance to realize how ego functions within you in daily life situations, in how you communicate with people, and most importantly, how you react towards the things that people say or do? When you get angry, it's because of ego. When you feel indignified, insulted, it's because of ego. And these kind of things lead to your wonderful and carefully built sattva to crash. You lose your condition. So, in yoga circles, many people talk about ego, and many teachers will tell you, ego must die. Ego cannot die. Everybody has ego. Without ego, you wouldn't be a person. But ego is like wine. If you drink a little bit of wine, it is very beneficial. But if you drink a whole bottle, it becomes like a poison. It harms you. You end up with a headache and bad mood and hangover and what have you. So you need to control the amount of wine that you drink so that you enjoy it, but it doesn't affect you in a negative way. Ego is like that. You can compare ego with pride. Pride is based on ego. But if pride is controlled, it's grace, dignity. If pride is not controlled, it's arrogance. You see the difference? It's totally opposite. It's one and the same thing, pride. But if it is controlled and handled well, it's dignity and grace. If it is uncontrolled, it's arrogance. Ego is just like that. Ego determines where we go in our life. If you look at people at the top, in politics, in industry, the president of companies, the people on higher places of government, these people all have big ego. It's what determines that they end up in that position. So if you don't have a big ego, you can dream of being in such a position, you will never get there. You're just not made for it. So ego is important in how we function. And there are people with a big ego and there are people with small ego and everything in between. But the important thing is, how do we handle it? How do we deal with it? So ego cannot die. It will not, you cannot cut it out, you cannot make it disappear. But you have to learn to control it. And the only way to learn to control ego is by being aware of it. Every time when you feel upset because of other people's actions, you have to consciously undergo your emotion. Think about why you feel like that. Instead of getting angry at that person and start a fight, just use it as an opportunity to study, to learn. That is how you eventually will be able to control ego. In the beginning, very difficult, but it will become second nature. If you simply start, next time when confronted with a situation that causes you to become angry, upset, you, instead of starting a fight or a confrontation, just be curious. Be curious about why you are feeling like that. How this other person can make you feel like that. Usually the reaction is blame. You have done something wrong and that is why I feel like this. But it's useless. If you continue to do this, this will just happen for the rest of your life. So instead, first you accept that everybody is human, including you. So if somebody does something that offends you, instead of getting angry, you use your heart. And when you use your heart, you realize that that person may be doing something wrong, but they can't help it. They are only human. That doesn't mean that you have to accept people's wrongdoing, but instead of starting a fight, you just avoid confrontation with these kind of people. Sometimes that's very difficult. It can be a family member. You cannot avoid family members. They're family. But where it comes to acquaintances, friends, and what have you, it will just happen that you will start meeting them less. That's a natural development. And where it comes to work, it means that you have to gradually prepare for a new situation. If you're in a situation at work where people are constantly triggering you, offending you, insulting you, abusing you, you don't quit your job tomorrow because you damage yourself if you do that. But instead, you start carefully planning for your next step. You prepare, maybe you have to re-educate yourself. You try to find a new job, basically. But if you do that with emotion, you'll make mistakes and you harm yourself. So take a deep breath and calmly think about what you need to do to get out of that situation without damage. And this also applies to a relationship that you can be in that is harmful, that is abusive, that there are many people in a relationship that they don't want to be there. Every day they're unhappy about being there, but they feel trapped, they feel imprisoned, they feel like they have no choice. They have to stay in that relationship. That is because ending the situation, the relationship, is very hard. It means you have to do everything yourself, or start a whole new life maybe, or find a house to live. There are so many things involved. Much more difficult than changing jobs is when you're in a relationship that every day makes you sad, depressed, unhappy. Ignorant people who have no choice, they stay and they suffer all their life. A yogi or a smart person, a wise person, will gradually start planning. What can I do? Start preparing for the day that you have a choice, that you can say, hey, listen, I've been suffering from this for years now. I don't have to accept this anymore. I will choose to live my own life, or choose to live my life with somebody else who is not making me unhappy every day. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, when you react with emotion, it always leads to more misery. But if you stay calm and just think about everything that is happening and step by step develop a plan on how you can change the situation without harm, without conflict, emotions, and what have you, and damage, physically or financially, you need to carefully plan. And that is also a quality that you have in the crown chakra. Until then, you manage the situation. You do it consciously, but from that moment on, that you make that choice, at least you have a feeling that you're in control. And that in itself is reason not to be depressed and unhappy anymore. You take control. So ego, it's very difficult to explain. I'm trying to give many examples, and we will talk about it many times. We talked about it many times before, and I will talk about it more often in the future as well, until you really start implementing it into your daily life, that you start recognizing how ego is triggered in other people, but also, and more importantly, that you see how it is triggered in you. The second paragraph on that same page, page 2, talks about dharma. This is very interesting because, let me read it. Apart from the higher feelings of delight, bliss, and peace, other higher feelings that are typically related to our own karma are developed in this center. These express themselves as dharma, or the characteristics that form our true essential nature. This is called svarupa or svarupa sthiti, being seated in the self. We talked about this before, and I promised you we would talk about it more later on. We all have our own true nature, true characteristics, but most people are not aware of that, because what is clouding our connection with our true characteristics, with our true self, is how we are conditioned. From the moment that we are born, we are conditioned by our parents, by our education, by the media, by our culture, and that is what we identify with. While our true nature is very subtle. That is our soul consciousness. You can also call it your heart's content. In yoga it's called Dharma. And Dharma, many people in Buddhist circles and yoga circles, when they talk about Dharma, they do very mysteriously about it, but the real meaning of Dharma is essence. The essence of you. People who practice yoga, they gradually get rid of all their conditioning, which is pollution in our eyes. And we call that the purification process. You gradually get rid of all the conditioning, everything that you always believed in, to be, and that outside influence has made you to believe. And you will replace that more and more with what you truly feel. As a result of this, people on this path, it's not only in yoga, any real spiritual practice leads to the same development. You discover what you truly feel as a result of that, or who you truly are. As a result of that, your life will change considerably. We call that transformation. I have taught yoga for close to 30 years, 27 years, and I've always seen my students transform. It is the reason why I cannot teach yoga in another way. I cannot teach modern yoga. Just to make money, for example, which is what most yoga teachers do, to earn a living. Because I know that the way that I am teaching yoga, it really leads to transforming people's lives. And that is more than money, the reward of knowing that you can touch people like that and help them to find their true nature, their dharma, and lead to a more fulfilling life. That is a much better reward than money. So that is the nature, that is the essence of yoga, and most yoga teachers don't know this. And if they know a little bit about it because they heard somebody else say it or they read something in a book, they don't know how it works. They don't know about sattva, they don't know about the crown chakra. Technically, they just don't know how it works. Anyway, in marketing also the 7th chakra from the bottom, the crown chakra, is used. In Korea you have a drink that is called chilsong. 7th star. You call it cider. You usually don't say chilsong, you call it cider. But in Europe that drink is called 7-Up. 7-Up. I don't know where they got this from, but it is based on the crown chakra. It implies that if you drink this drink, you will be in 7th heaven. which is another expression directly referring to the crown chakra. Seventh heaven. Why not first or second or third heaven or just one heaven? No, seventh heaven. 7 Up, a drink full of sugar that definitely doesn't lead to the crown chakra, but you know, that is marketing technique. All right, questions? The crown chakra is, Sahasrara means lotus. Lotus, the flower with 1,000 petals. The crown chakra, the goal of everything we do with our yoga practice and study. All right, let's have a short break, then we'll practice asana, and then I will introduce pranayama.